Let's take a look ourselves, though, at today's newspapers. We're joined by journalist Ryan Shields. Ryan, nice to see you again.
Good morning.
What's caught your attention today?
Well, one in the West Australian, first of all, and this is to do with the closure or planned closure of up to 150 Indigenous communities. Or so we thought. That's what the Premier, Colin Barnett, has been talking about for a little while. And, of course, Tony Abbott got himself into a bit of hot water talking about how these communities are sometimes a lifestyle choice. Now the Premier seems to be changing his language somewhat and saying, well, no, maybe what I said earlier was a little bit extreme. And he's now talking about this hub and orbit plan, where he seems to be suggesting that, well, actually some communities may be beefed up, may actually be gazetted as towns and have extra resources poured into them. But of course that would come at the expense of some of those smaller ones, which will still be downgraded, but there will still be, Indigenous communities in these sort of town hub and orbit structures. So look, it's a change in language apart from anything else, but as we know, language is very important in these situations, and it's being seen as Colin Barnett edging away from that very tough and clear position that he put early on in the piece.
And a really difficult issue as well, because a lot of these communities have a high demand for a range of government services, medical, social and otherwise, and clearly you can't have a hospital and a school and a social worker and an outreach service in every community of 20 people.
Yeah, that's right. And it's the numbers, it's the fact there might be 20 people or thereabouts in these communities, and of course the sheer geography of it. A lot of these places are a long way from the cities or the resources. The roads necessarily aren't great. The sheer logistics of supporting these communities is sometimes high and therefore expensive, so I guess that's where the government standpoint comes from. But you're right, it is a contentious issue, and it's definitely been one that there's been a lot of campaign action on about across the country. I've noticed there's protests in all other states, not just in Western Australia.
Now let's turn to a story you're noticing in The Age, and this is a policy problem for any government, and one that I would imagine they'd be looking at this morning going, oh no, please don't make us have to deal with this, the issue of foreign buyers buying Australian homes.
Yeah.
So what's The Age got?
Well, it's one that doesn't seem to be going away, as you suggest.
In fact, as it's being dug into further, and this, in this case by the Foreign Investment Review Board, the anecdotes seem to be borne out.
Well, exactly right. So what we have now is new figures. They're actually from the 2013-2014 financial year, so there's a bit of a lag there, but they're the latest figures that we have. And you can see there on the graph, which is showing new dwellings and old dwellings, and these are foreign investments in those dwellings, simply off the charts over that year that's in measure there, especially those new dwellings there, which is the yellow line. The figure is about $12 billion, which has been poured in to the Australian market, primarily from China. And of course, I'm always a bit wary when there are stories like this, because there can be that edge of race thrown in. Why are we talking about Chinese buying our houses, that kind of thing. But it is a real policy issue, as you suggest. And, the real world effect of this kind of thing is that you have money coming from elsewhere, coming into the market and pushing up those prices for people who may be local who wish to get in.
And a lot of the times that money is being parked there, they're happy to pay over market price for a new off-the-plan apartment, because they know, well, look, it's a pretty stable property market. You park a couple of $1 million in a big Sydney apartment, you price everyone out of it, and it takes money out of the Chinese banking system, which is questionable in times. People have sort of been trying to move capital out of China, so it's a really interesting process.
Yeah, and this is where the policy challenge is so great, because it was only in February that Tony Abbott flagged they'd be bringing in these new fees for foreign investment into the housing market, and I think the figure that was mooted at the time there was about $5,000, which you have to say, in the scheme of property, let alone international investments and the like, isn't a great amount of money. You'd find that in the couch.
Now, what's the story you're looking at in the Mercury today?
So this is one on a related theme almost. The Tasmanian government has released a discussion paper. I know they're always interesting discussion papers, but this one is about how Tasmania can increase its population. We've got other states and parts of the country talking about how they can manage this runaway population growth. It's the opposite problem that Tasmania is facing, and the statistics they have is that by the year 2047, if nothing changes in their policy settings, the population of Tasmania will actually start to decrease, which is a real issue for a small state. So they're trying to scratch their heads and come up with new and innovative ways to actually increase the Tasmanian population, and one of those is stopping people basically running away to other states. They've got a huge drain to the mainland.
Putting a gate up.
Yeah, Fortress Tasmania.
Pulling up the drawbridge. Very quickly, let's have a quick look at the Canberra Times, because this is an interesting story. The portrait of Joko Widodo has been taken off the wall at the Portrait Gallery because...
Because, depends who you ask, is it censorship or is it simply protection for the artwork? It's been taken down obviously in the wake of the two executions in Bali. Bali. The gallery, for its part, says, no, this isn't censorship. We just didn't want the painting damaged. You know, there could have been reprisal. Someone could have, you know, smashed it up, whatever it is. We took it down to protect the artwork. The artist himself says, well, I actually would have preferred you leave it on the wall. It's not yours, it's mine after all. And if someone attacks it, well, so be it. The water's a little bit muddy, though. I know this is, you know, has been talked about for a little bit, but there was a quote in the paper today, basically from the gallery director, saying that he was swayed by the recall of Australia's ambassador. Not sure quite what that means.
Not quite as neutral, maybe, then, as he's saying. Nice to see you, Ryan. Thanks so much.
Thank you.